I got a message, I got a song. Can I get a witness? Tell me what's going on.
All right, big issues right now going on in the United States Senate, from local issues, domestic issues, to international, and the issue of Afghanistan. On the phones with us right now, U.S. Senator John McCain. Senator McCain, good morning. Hello, good morning, Senator.
Hey, good morning.
How are you?
Fine, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well. Late night for people in the Senate last night, I understand.
Yeah, the Senate Finance Committee was in till unusually late hours. Perhaps for a change, they earned their salary. We'll see.
It is. I have a question about what's happening in the Middle East, and are you a little bit frustrated? Like it seemed, well, I am, but are you frustrated with the way the president's handling Afghanistan right now? Does it seem like he's delaying and he should be acting a little bit more quickly?
Well, I'm very concerned. The Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mullen, testified that time is not on our side, that we needed to get these additional troops over there, that the strategy was already decided in March. And look, we've already got 68,000 troops over there, and the longer we wait to implement a winning strategy, the more casualties there we risk. And so I'm very concerned, and I read in the newspaper this morning that, quote, White House eyeing narrower war effort. I got to tell you, my friend, that would be the worst of all worlds, to do a half measure that is not sufficient resources in the eyes of General McChrystal and General Petraeus, and General Petraeus was one of the designers of this strategy, and he's the one that designed the successful strategy in Iraq. So I'm very, very, very concerned. And by the way, we had an amendment that was defeated on party line votes yesterday, calling for General McChrystal and General Petraeus and the head of NATO to come and testify before Congress. They obviously are not going to. Secretary Gates, I'm disappointed to say, is not going to let them do that before they decide on the strategy. I think Congress should have a role.
And I was going to ask you about that next, about why they would vote against having them testify there. It seems to me that in this era of transparency, that they would want the Congress to have all the information. If they could get General McChrystal to testify and give you the insight of why he's asking for this troop measure, that it would make more sense to the members of Congress. What reason are they giving for not allowing them to do that?
They say that the president should be allowed to make the decision first. It's okay for General McChrystal to testify before 60 Minutes. And to give a speech over in England at the Institute for Strategic Studies, but not before the Congress of the United States. And the other thing I've tried to point out to the administration people, if you want us in on the landing, you ought to try to get us in on the takeoff.
Right.
Here. And so by closing out any kind of testimony or questioning of our military leadership over there, then obviously I think it harms their ability to get everybody on board once they decide. But my great concern right now is that the president is being pressured by the left of the base of his party, and that he is now contemplating, anyway, according to news reports, a different strategy rather than the one that we know has the best chance of success. There's only one strategy that has the best chance of success, and that is a properly resourced, properly implemented strategy that will start bringing a successful turnaround in the next year to 18 months. And I want to remind you again, our military commanders are telling us the situation is deteriorating, in their words. That doesn't argue for a long, drawn-out process, particularly since they said that they had designed the strategy already last March.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, Senator, but the idea behind the surge in Iraq that worked so well, which I know you played a big part in, was to have the troops available to let the people of Iraq know that we are not only going to secure areas, but the troops are going to remain there, and they could trust that we were going to stay and help them, so that we won over the hearts and minds of people. And they began to give our troops information about where the bombs were, who the people were that wished to do us harm. And that is how we won over the people, to give us the intelligence to stop things before they occurred. And if we don't implement that in Afghanistan, the people of Afghanistan aren't going to trust the Americans. They think the Taliban and Al-Qaeda are just going to remain or come back? And why would they choose sides with us if we are just going to leave or not be there to help them after they give us information?
Well, you said it in a more articulate fashion than I do. I would add a couple of points, and one is that we left another time after we helped them drive out the Russians in the 90s, and we left the area completely. Warlords and then Taliban took over, and we know about 9/11. So we risked that. Second small point, but illustrative, I think, of the situation, the former president of Pakistan, General Musharraf, day before yesterday was said, American delaying here is being viewed as a sign of weakness by the countries in the region. And if they think we're going to leave the region, they have to stay in the region and they have to accommodate. And so you could really have a very difficult situation here that I think could have terrible impact throughout. So I'm very concerned about it. We had a briefing day before yesterday with the President's National Security Advisor. I was not comforted by the what he had to share with us, which was basically nothing that hasn't been published. It was just his attitude of, well, we're considering a whole bunch of different options, as if the option that has been recommended by General McChrystal, Admiral Mullen, and General Petraeus were just one of many. You see my point? That's
absolutely.
Disturbing. And the president does have a problem with the left base of his party. Harry Truman had a problem with the base of his party when he stayed in Korea, and we eventually were able not to be kicked out there. Abraham, the American people, when people were urging him to negotiate with the Confederacy. Franklin Delano Roosevelt did things prior to World War II. In other words, in times like these, the great presidents in history have stood up to public opinion and done what they believe was best for the security of this nation.
Let me ask you one more question about this, and then I want to ask you a question about the Iranians. But the rules of engagement, it's been much publicized that there is a new set of rules in Afghanistan about engagement in which it seems as if our soldiers' hands are being tied. There was a story that was out that there's an investigation going on about 4 Marines that were killed. They were ambushed, and they called in for artillery. The artillery was refused because of the new rules of engagement about possible civilian casualties. Can you give us any kind of insight on how these rules have changed, or has this been overblown in the media?
We're trying to find out how much the rules have been changed. I have confidence in General McChrystal, but when we obviously don't want unnecessary civilian casualties.
Absolutely.
I would remind you there were times early in the Iraq situation and other places where we inhibited the ability of our troops to defend themselves. The best example was in Beirut back way years ago when the Marines were not allowed to have bullets in the chamber.
Right.
So I am concerned about that. But right now I'm most concerned as to whether we're going to adopt a strategy that will doom us to failure.
Okay.
Could I just say on the Iranian issue real quick?
Sure.
From the news reports, it sounds like there may be progress. I would remind everybody of our beloved Ronald Reagan, who said, trust but verify. I hope that there's progress. We all hope that there is progress. And given the Iranians' record of deception and lying.
Right.
And I also want to emphasize again, we should be talking about regime change in Iran, and we should be talking about human rights, and we should be aiding those elements that get communications and encouragement to the people of Iran who have been subjected not only to a corrupt election but beating and killing in the streets.
And see, that was going to be my question, is with what we saw after the last election and the uprising of what seemed to be a predominant group of young people in Iran that wanted regime change, felt that the elections were a farce. Did we miss the boat, or do we still have time to get the involvement of those people to eventually have them make the regime change in their own country and have it not seem as if the Americans are rolling in and trying to do something different? It actually comes from the Iranian people.
We should be doing doing exactly what we did during the Cold War, and it's interesting how some arguments, keep coming back and coming back. When Ronald Reagan said, "Take down this wall, Mr. Gorbachev," oh no, you're going to make the Russians mad, etc. There were even people on the left that said that Germany should not reunite because that might provoke Russia. You have to go back and read the arguments from the left during those days. Well, they're saying the same thing about Iran. Oh no, we've got to deal with the Iranian leaders. You want us to deal with the leaders that are beating and imprisoning and brutalizing their citizens that have tried to demonstrate peacefully in the streets? We should be doing what we did during the Cold War when we encouraged the workers in Gdansk and Lech Walesa. Nathan Sharansky said when the word of Ronald Reagan's speech went through the Gulag, it ignited them and it gave them strength. I believe that human rights and the right of democracy, the people in Iran, is going to be realized, and it began the day that the world saw that young woman named Neda bleed to death in the street in Tehran.
Yeah, that was a horrible reminder of the reality of what's happening in that country. I think you are right that the people will do that if we would just help encourage them, and it would start from the top with something from our president that would speak of the freedom and us being on the side of the people that wish that in that country. Senator, thanks for coming on. I know it was a long night for everybody there in D.C.
Listen, it wasn't that long for me. I'm not on that committee in interest of full disclosure.
Oh, that's okay. I appreciate you calling. You're always welcome. It's a thrill to have you on with us, so I hope to talk to you again soon.
It'd be a real pleasure. Talk to you soon.
All right, thanks. That is Senator John McCain on with us from D.C.